Today I want to talk about some exercises to help maintain suppleness and just functionality in the horse's body. They're what I consider really foundational exercises, except you don't ever move past the foundation. There's something I believe riders should keep in their toolbox and use all the time, no matter if you've transcended through the levels and you're at a high level now. Let's talk about why. So what we're going to explore is the turn on the forehand, the turn on the haunches, the backing up and going forward, and then stretching the horse forward and downward. These are sometimes things we use for young horses, and then once the horse has learned the technique, we let it go. But the physicality of these movements are very helpful because they're so specific and they're so clear and easy for riders to administer to restore range of motion and especially symmetry side to side. So if we could start with my demo rider here on Arlington, arguably the world's largest halflinger, why don't you start out with walking down and doing a turn on the forehand and come back. So when you're doing exercises like this, sometimes there's the question of how long or many times you should do the exercise. I'll tell you what I'm looking for. So Samantha's going to do a half turn. I generally have people just do a 180 turn so that they can, Arlington's like, I know what's coming. Generally a half turn followed by a brisk movement forward is what's necessary to restore the forward thinking attitude of the horse. But also if the horse has gotten kind of squirrely like Arlington did, when you march them forward again, you're helping draw the hind legs under the body again. So there you go. Good. So that was a crossing of the hind legs, but we're not just looking for crossing of the hind legs in order to tease out any rigidity that might be in the fascia in the hind quarter. What I am primarily looking for is the horse begins to soften his neck and mobilize his jaw. When we start to, so right there Arlington clamps on the bit, then he thinks about mobilizing the jaw. Everybody kind of witnessed that there with his mouth. What I'd like to see on this next one, and if we do see it, then we would be done with the exercises. I would like to see him softly chewing on the bit, not gapping his mouth and trying to rip the reins out of Samantha's hand. So there we go. That's better. That's better. There we go. So we get some soft chewing. We have a much more rounded nature in the horse's neck, not because the rider was holding him there, okay? So then you can be done with that, Samantha, and let me demonstrate. So again, turn on the forehand is an exercise I use either from the ground or from the saddle on definitely a weekly basis, sometimes depending on the horse, a daily basis. But again, it helps unlock the jaw. Sometimes I'll intersperse that with a turn on the haunches. So I'm going to turn towards you, towards the camera with Diamante here. So now we'll be turning the horse around on his hind end. So right there you can see Diamante stuck his neck out and pulled on the bit, right? He wanted to use all this muscle strength in his neck to get the maneuver done instead of bending the hind joints and rotating his torso and softening his jaw. So again, I'm going to practice this exercise until I get him chewing on the bit. Now depending on, and I'm not fidgeting on the bit to make that happen. I'm going to continue to ride the exercise until the exercise creates that for me. So right now he still has not released his jaw. He's pretty clamped down on this bit, right? So I'm going to keep making my turns. If he starts to anticipate the movement, I might make it like a full turn instead of a 180 turn. So depending on how sensitive Diamante's feet are, you know, this is a horse I do struggle with keeping his feet comfortable. That is always reflected in his, you know, his neck and his jaw. So depending on the state of those affairs, depends on how quickly there's a little yielding of his jaw. Everybody sees him start to move the bit, and then his neck started to get a little round. So like we saw with the other horse, I'm going to do it one more time to see if I just got lucky on that one, or if I'm starting to get some result, and then I would just leave it, you know, let it be. You don't have to drill something forever. In fact, I don't think that's good most of the time. So we got a little stuck there, not so clean. The jaw stayed totally immobile, so I'm gonna do it again. He is starting to, I can feel under my legs, starting to feel a little bit less like an overinflated balloon, so meaning he's letting go of some of his tension. There we get a little chewing on the bit. Oh. Tried to rush, I asked him to, there we go. He started to rush, I asked him to take his time, and then he chewed on the bit there nicely. Now he's in a nice soft contact. He's not pulling on my reins. Hopefully you can see that. So, and then I would leave that exercise alone. So we did the turn on the forehand with the big guy, Arlington, and then I just demonstrated, good, you want to keep chewing and releasing? Absolutely. And then I just demonstrated turn on the haunches with this guy, and like I want you all to take away is like, how many times do I do that? These are not young horses. If they were young horses, I might do the exercise twice and then go do something else for 30 seconds to give them a mental break more than physical, and then come back. But the response I'm looking for is in that sometimes we get hung up on what are they doing with their legs. I'm really looking for the neck and the jaw with those maneuvers, and similarly with the backing up like I talked about. So I think what we'll do is I'll have my demo rider come back into the foreground here, and we'll face the camera from over there, and we'll demonstrate a little bit of backing up and going forward. And this again is another exercise that we'll often use in a young horse. And then, once they back up obediently, unless you're, a reining rider or Western rider, I find that sometimes English riders don't back their horse up very much. And backing up is so good for their rectus abdominis, for stretching the lower back. It's incredible. And also for mobilizing the jaw because of that recruitment you're getting in the torso. So look, I just talked about it, and now Diamante's releasing his jaw. So we'll look first at Arlington, the halflinger. Now Arlington, we can see that he commonly will try to get a little bit crooked in the backup, mostly because he anticipates it's coming, and then he blocks through his body and he widens his hind legs, which then sends his hind end off one direction or the other. So that was better. Good. See him start to move his jaw and his tongue there. That was awesome, because Samantha just told him to take your time here, slow down, find that nice slow rhythmic backing up, and we get the result we're looking for, which is the softness in the tongue, the jaw. Right there, he tried to go back to his old response. Samantha just wrote it out really nicely. See, now he's softening in the neck. When I say softening, I mean he's changing his posture for the better, right? It's because all of those, as you all know, those core muscles are connected into the jaw and the tongue. And so this exercise of backing up is awesome response there. And so when Arlington gets that from a walk, I would leave that alone for now. And then maybe 5 minutes from now during my ride, I would throw in a little bit of the backing up from like a trot. I would trot, stop, and then back up to revisit the exercise throughout. But I would start by making sure I'm getting good responses. So let's take a little look at Diamante. Now Diamante, this is how you can modify things on a horse that stays a little bit straighter in the backup than Arlington was tending to. So first of all, I have to get him paying attention to me, not looking at the trailer there. So sometimes we'll just go one step back and forward. And you can see he might start to work his jaw a lot, which is what I want here. And I'm gonna try to really minimize my cue for getting him. I'm just kind of playing around with this, right? Like backing him forward and then taking him forward, back up, go forward. I'm just keeping it really light and soft. And the whole point is keeping his core engaged, not doing a prescribed number of steps so that he starts to anticipate and kind of lock up and lurch backwards. I'm not doing a horse show. I don't care about doing the exercise for a set number of steps in a perfect frame. It's more about getting him to release the jaw and not push himself backwards. So he has stayed in a really nice neck position here, but because of this horse's conformation, he's built sort of downhill. If the rider's not in balance with their body and asking him to back up from their body, I'll do it wrong one time so you can see. What happens is he pushes himself backwards. Some people don't care about that, but it's all wrong. So let's say I'm going to use the reins. And some people were taught, I don't know why, to squeeze with the leg and pull back at the same time. So see how tight his neck's getting here? And see his attitude of his neck is wanting to go down too low. This part of his neck is starting to curl in. So then what he's doing is just shoving himself from the back. From the front leg. So let me do that again. So I'll pull him back with my reins. This is how you do it wrong. Like how crunched up his neck is, okay? He's grunting. I don't know if you can hear that, but he was sort of grunting and groaning. So now I'll do it, so Arlington's dancing for us over there. Now I'll do it the right way. So see how his neck just stays really comfy and neutral. He just moves with my body backwards. We forget how sensitive they are sometimes, right? Good boy. Really soft in the reins. Good. So we've explored I'm just giving you some takeaways on things to look for, nice releasing of the jaw, the whole purpose of these exercises, and encouraging you to keep them in your toolbox, even for seasoned horses. Because as I pointed out with Diamante, who gets sore feet, even with a horse that gets good regular training, he is prone to other things going wrong because of our environment, right? The last thing that I want to explore, we can do this together, is to remind riders to stretch the horse forward and downward. This is something people don't do enough of. If you can just commit to 2 or 3 minutes every day of your ride in the trot to stretch the horse forward and downward, it is so good for their back. I mean, if you did nothing else but that, I think horses would stay quite a bit sounder. So this just gives you the chance to look at 2 different horses. We'll start together in a regular working trot, posting, and then we'll just ask the horses to stretch forward and down and kind of observe any changes. So look at the length of the stride from the hind foot. Maybe they take a longer step when the neck goes down. So I'm just going to start in my working trot. I'm going to set my rhythm. Inside my head, I'm just counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Make sure my horse is listening. And then I'm just going to start to let the reins slide through my ring finger. I'm going to keep the same rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I want his neck to go as low as he'll go without changing the rhythm. Steering around all the obstacles out here. This is especially challenging when you're doing this in the field. And so hopefully you're observing, you can hear him forging, yeah, with the hind feet. So he is taking a longer stride. And hopefully you're seeing a nice soft tail carriage. You hear him forging again. He's kind of freeing up, getting himself out of the way with the front end. Hey, a little muddy patch there. And now, so this would be your stretchy trot. And like I say, you would do this for maybe 2 or 3 minutes a day. Doesn't matter if you do it in the beginning or the middle. It really depends on your horse. So if your horse is still kind of figuring out what the rein contact is, you don't want to try to do it in the beginning of your ride because they're probably just going to get disorganized. So I'm going to take him back to the working trot. Just going to shorten my reins. This should not feel like a pulling match. This should just be a matter of truly just shortening. Good boy, that's a great sign. Shorten the reins. Rhythm stays the same. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. Good. And I always love how they feel in their body after they've stretched a little bit like that. Okay, so I'm going to make a down transition. So thanks for tuning in to just kind of a recap of some foundational exercises, how to employ them and what you're looking for, and keeping them part of your toolbox, no matter where you are in your journey and your training.